background on the competition quick. Back in 2004, a group in San Antonio started meeting to put together this competition. 2005 was the first competition in the Southwest, and they had 5 teams there. The next year in 2006 was when regionals started. They had 44 teams compete. It's been amazing growth. And this past year in 2010, there were 83 teams? I think I said 86. That's amazing growth, and it's all thanks to the volunteers who put this on, which is a lot of you guys. The sponsors, all the students and the faculty that are willing to put the time into this. And it's a great experience. I think from the volunteers I've talked to, a lot of them have had a lot of fun, had a lot of, learned things. And it's a great time.
So one last thing that I would just really like to drive home. This is my absolute favorite CCDC experience. And I think between the two of us, we've done 15 competitions. So we've been to quite a few. So one of the competitions, we were doing extremely well. Everybody was in one big pit. So the red team and all the blue teams were all in one big pit. And they had a nice real-time scoreboard going. It was the last hour of the competition, and it was pretty much us, one other team were like far and away first and second place. Like there was a little competition between us, but most of the other teams there were so far behind that they just, there was no chance of them catching up at all. And it was last hour of the competition. Everything was up. Everything was going. We'd already killed all our injects. We were just kind of, sitting there hoping another inject would come in so we could get some more points. One of the teams that wasn't doing so hot, their advisor walked over into our pit and came up to me and said, "Excuse me, I've noticed you've been doing really well. You've really been getting these injects taken care of, and your team's doing really well. We're in a rut. We don't know how to do some of these injects that we got in the first hour of the competition. We're totally screwed. We've got no points. We've had so much downtime. There's no chance that we can, win anything. We're not, and we've gotten to the point where we're mad, we're frustrated, and we're not enjoying this at all. Would you come over and help us out?" So that last hour of the competition, I went over into their pit. I sat down with their guys. I started talking to them. I started teaching them. I still have, people I talked to online from that competition. Years from now, that will be the one thing I still remember from this competition, was talking with people from the other schools. And I really think that doesn't happen enough. I'm sure you guys have seen it, like at our regional competitions, you're in the hotel and you just see a cluster, oh, there goes the cluster of students from the other school, and everybody's clumped together. "Oh, quick, don't go over and talk to those guys. They're from the other school. They're going to social engineer us and steal how we did Inject 3, even though they have access to the internet and they can look up a FAQ on how to set it up." No, that is really dumb, and it says in the charter for CCDC that this is supposed to help build networking, not just between you and the people running it, or you and the red team, or you and the sponsors. It should really be between you and the other blue teams, because these are going to be your contemporaries. These are going to be other people who are going to be working at the same companies in the same field you should be in, and you should get to know them, because while they are competitors for that one day, they're going to be good friends and good resources for a long time after that.
That's a very, very excellent point. Our rival UAT, we get along quite well with them. It was a pretty bitter rivalry at first, I'm not gonna lie, but we've made friends since with a lot of the guys from UAT. And now one of my coworkers is someone I competed directly against from UAT. So there you go.
Yeah, we're kind of the same way. One of my other favorite memories was actually us with Baker, the guys who won nationals 2-3 times. 2 years ago, they beat us, but one of my favorite parts was just our whole team and their whole team sitting in the hot tub at the hotel, just kind of like, "How was your day?" "Not bad." "How was your day?" "Not bad." Everybody else is running around, not talking to anybody, and we're just kicking back in the hot tub. It was great.
And I think that's the total key of CCDC is information sharing. So it builds like a network of people that that are so passionate about computer security as well as you, and that's the key of building like any person that's interested in this. So they come and they're like, well, I kind of like using Metasploit, and I've heard of Backtrack before, and they have no idea about any of this stuff, and then you give them some focus, and you say, hey, this you can do all this, and you can meet these people, and the competition is awesome, and it just gives you this great focus and this great support group of people that are passionate about everything that you are, and whenever you share that, it's just that's what builds it. That's what makes the team who it is, and all the teams, I'm sure.
Yeah, back echoing what was said earlier, there are a couple of guys on this team, or a few of them actually, that never been involved with anything like this before. A year ago today, they'd never configured Apache. They didn't know what bind was. They, knew almost nothing about the security and infrastructure field. They knew a lot of stuff about a lot of other things, but they got curious, they got involved, and they went to nationals. Now they're here, so it shows how far you can go when you apply yourself with this stuff. I think if everyone wants to go down the line and share their first CCDC or their most favorite CCDC memory, and then we'll open it up for questions.
In 30 seconds or less. Yeah, 30 seconds or less. Go.
Okay. One of my favorite CCDC moments was at our regional competition this year when we had a 2-hour VPN inject, and then at the same time we got a 2-hour radius inject, both of which are my exclusive specialties. So I spent an hour and a half working on the radius inject, got that up, and then while I was working on that, I delegated the VPN inject to the rest of my team. I asked them to set up a Linux server on the VM or on ESX for me, so that as soon as I finished Radius, I could go ahead and start working on the VPN. In 15 minutes from memory, I set up a OpenVPN server with writing the documentation and having it all work in 15 minutes with the help of my team, because having to sit there and wait for the Linux server to get installed would have just killed me. But thanks to you guys, that worked out. So, John? Yeah.
Okay, my first competition, I'm still a relative security noob. I get thrown onto a machine that I'm not that familiar with. So long story short, the red team had a copy of Core Impact that had just been updated to include an unpatch, a vulnerability for a certain unpatched, or I should say an exploit for an unpatched service that was running on my machine. Someone asked me to help them click through a Windows install because they had more important things to do, and I was the FNG on the team. So I'm sitting there waiting for this thing to go, and I reach over and start running random commands on my computer. Eventually I forget stuff, so I just start hitting W, enter, which shows you who's logged in, who's connected on what. And it's just root, but I'm bored, I got nothing better to do, so I keep doing that. All of a sudden it goes from 1 line to 2 lines. And it's root smack. I'm like, oh, fuck. I dive over the table, grab the power cable, yank it out of the back, nearly send the server toppling over. And everyone's going, what? What happened? What happened? I'm like, hacker. And they're like, what? I'm like, someone was on this machine. Smacker was here. And so we go through, we do all this stuff, cut ahead a few hours, and we're sitting in the red team debriefing. And they get up there, they're talking us through it, and they go, and so our one big one that after we got through our little recon phase, once we wanted to start actually getting in, we had this nice vulnerability for an unpatched thing in the service on this box. And we got in on every team, except for one of the teams. Right when we hit agent deploy, that box just disappeared off the network. And we couldn't use that to pivot onto the rest of their network. We have no idea what they did.
I think I got 2. One was at a regional competition, and the red team, like about half the red team that year, was hiding behind the door. And one of the guys was just like, hey, it's a white team member, can you let us in? Yeah, sure. All of a sudden, they tried to rip the door out of my hand. And so I'm sitting there pulling on the door for like 3 minutes trying to close it because there's like 4 guys behind the door. And all the guys are sitting there like, what the hell's going on? What? Is she on something? It's like, I finally get the door closed, like, red team, thanks for your help, guys. And then the other one at regionals this past year, actually, we got an inject, and I looked at it, I was like, oh, PCI related inject, great, whatever. There's credit card information on here somewhere, probably a proposal to figure out how to, why should we do PCI? Well, because you have to. It's easy. And then I actually sat down and read the inject 5 minutes later, and it was to do a good chunk of a PCI SACD self-assessment in 2 hours on a network I knew nothing about. Wow. Yeah, I cried a little, and then got most of it done, I think. That may or may not have been completely truthful. It was awesome.
I guess mine's more of a overall encompassing. My favorite part of the entire competition was to basically create the team and to have people like Sean and Jared come in and never configure a Windows server, not know what Linux was and everything, and then at the competition just hand them a piece of paper. I handed Jared an inject that said set up SharePoint in 2 hours. And I looked at it and said, thank God I don't have to do this. And I just handed it to him. And he got 90% of it done, and it was awesome because he had never touched that before. And it was really awesome to see how far he had come from what's a Windows server to, okay, I'll set up SharePoint in 2 hours. Fuck you, Sean. So that's probably my favorite part of the whole competition, just seeing these guys kind of, really grow and, just become incredibly proficient at what I asked them to do.
Does anybody have anything?
All right. One of my favorite things was going through. I was the part of my specialty was the web guy. PHP, dynamic web languages, any vulnerabilities there. That was my thing. So going through a web root of a website that we had set up for nationals, some store. Okay, whoop-de-doo. Going through it, finding stuff. About halfway through the competition, finding that, oh, hey, look, it's a PHP backdoor. Nice. Read the script, going through, wait, this doesn't work. I'd already locked down PHP enough that enough things didn't work so that the script was like, oh, this isn't going to work. I don't know if Red Team ever found it, but we found like 3 of them, and every single one of them was just, no.
Did you guys find the comment on the front page with the name or the login for the guy who had root access?
No. I think I changed some things about the theme, so...
So I have 2 real quick. If you go to www.wrccdc.org and you look at the past competitions, look at the 2009 competition, you'll see my ugly mug up there, standing alongside my colleague, James Schneider. We look like zombies because we had been up for like 96 hours straight. Needless to say, we will never, ever, ever do a 24-hour straight competition in our lives ever again.
It was so much fun, though.
The second one was from the same competition. I just happened to be walking into one of the team rooms, and I had noticed that their entire 18 members were gathered around this one PC. And to set the stage just slightly, one of Joe's colleagues had gotten root access onto the box, and they're sitting there watching the mouse move on its own. And I'm like, aren't you guys going to do something about that? They're like, the mouse is moving on its own. What's happening? So that was one of my favorite ones.
My favorite